So today, as I told you, I'll be dealing with one more text from Shakespeare, the paper titled Shakespeare. So Shakespearean drama. There are totally, I think, six plays prescribed for your syllabus. In Shakespeare, paper two, Shakespeare, you have a play called Merchant of Venice. Merchant of Venice is one interesting play of Shakespeare, which was published in the year 1600. 1600 and 1600 is 16 again exactly on 1600. This play was staged on in the theater on stage. This play was performed on stage in the theater, in the Globe Theater, and it became popular. Because critics say that Shakespeare during his life, though he had not visited Venice, where is Venice? Venice is located in Italy. Venice is located in Italy, and even in those ages, even during 16th century, 15th century, Venice was a popular city. It was a popular business or commercial city, you can call. It was a commercial city located in the southwestern part of Italy. Even today, people long to visit Venice because the entire city is again submerged in the water, in the ocean water. The river, the city is built in such a way that you have to use canoes, boats for the purpose of transportation in Venice. You don't find roads. You don't find roads or taxis or cars or bikes. You can't use bikes to move from one street to another street. You have to use boats. Venice is again even today. Venice is a popular tourist destination, and during Shakespearean time, it was a popular commercial center. Popular commercial center, business center. Here critics have come to the conclusion that again people, even the contemporary critics who lived during the time of Shakespeare, they were fully aware that Shakespeare in his life had not visited Venice, and he could come to know about Venice only through travelers, only through businessmen or travelers who went to Venice to do business and commerce from England. He heard about it from them. He could come to know about it only through travelers, from people who went to who went to Venice from England. So that's another interesting factor. So if you just browse in Google and search for the details of Venice, I can assure you, Paris, Venice, there are two or three cities which are most beautiful in the entire Europe, including even London is another important city. So Venice, Rome, in fact, Rome, Venice, Paris, and London, four major important cities. So what I meant to say here is, the story is about a merchant who belongs to the city called Venice. No, it's understood. The title itself is clear. Again, in the title itself, Shakespeare makes it clear that it's the story of a merchant who is from Venice. So, what is the name of the merchant? The name of the merchant is Antonio. So, Antonio is the merchant who belongs to the city called Venice. But Antonio, he was again in the story. He is unmarried. In the play, he is unmarried, and he is a bachelor, young bachelor, and we also come to know that he is not interested to marry in his life. He is not interested to marry anybody in his life, and he is only interested in business. He owns some ships ships ಅಡಗುಗಳಿದೆ ಅವನ ಹತ್ರ, and he has sent ships across the world to do trade and commerce, to do business and to bring goods. Okay, even to India and other parts of the world, he has sent ships to bring goods to Europe, okay, to the city called Venice. So this man is very, very popular, very, very popular in the entire city of Venice. And people are aware of him because Antonio lends money. And another interesting factor is the first interesting factor is a rich merchant who owns a ship. He has sent ships across the world to do trade, to do business. And the second interesting factor is he's a bachelor. He is not married. He is not interested in marriage. He has money, but the poor chap he is a good he is a good-hearted fellow. He's a good-hearted fellow. He gives money without expecting anything from them. So he is ready to lend money. He gives money to the poor people, to the needy people, without expecting any interest or anything. So very, very popular, and for that reason, the reason people like him, people like Antonio. Now he's popular because he gives money for poor people without expecting anything, even without interest. He doesn't even ask for the money to again from the poor people to return it. So that's the unique quality of Antonio. Okay, Antonio is the merchant of Venice. And is he the hero of the play? Not at all. It's not Antonio who is the hero of the play. But almost all the actions that you see in the play revolves around Antonio. So who is the hero of the play? We'll come to that later. There is one more character called Bassanio. Bassanio, Bassanio. Bassanio is a very good, a loyal friend of, or a loyal friend of Antonio. A very good, a loyal friend of Antonio. He loves Antonio very much. They are in good relationship. And even in fact, Antonio has no other best companion than Bassanio. Even Antonio likes Bassanio. Okay, they have good cordial relationship, good bondage. Even Antonio looks after or takes care of Bassanio because he loves him and he is so dependent on him for companionship. Even Bassanio loves Antonio. They have good friendship between the two. The major theme of this play is love and friendship. Okay, two major themes. Love, first major theme, and the second major theme is friendship. Okay, and there is good friendship between Bassanio and Antonio. And Bassanio also lives in the same city. Another interesting factor is Bassanio doesn't work at all. He doesn't work at all. Kelsaನೆ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ ಅವನು. And Bassanio is a good friend of Antonio, and he always depends on Antonio even for what? For his expenditure. He asks money from Antonio. Whenever he wants money, he asks Antonio to give him some money. And as I told you, since Antonio has no other companion or relatives or people close to him, there are no good people who are close to him other than Bassanio. So he is totally dependent on him. And whenever Bassanio asks for money, Antonio gives him. Antonio gives him because he is his close friend. So let us see what happens in the play. As I told you, this play was first staged in the year 1600, whereas Julius Caesar was staged in 1599. Okay, the source for Julius Caesar, as I told you, again, Shakespeare borrows it from Plutarch's the lives of great Romans and the lives of great the lives, lives, the lives of great Romans and Greeks. So Shakespeare borrows material for his historical plays from Plutarch's work. Whereas for other plays, he borrows material from Holinshed's Chronicles. Holinshed's Chronicles. Okay, Holinshed's Chronicles, another important source for Shakespearean plays. Now, this is very interesting play. This is a very interesting play, as I told you. And there is one more character called Shylock, who also lives in the same city. Shylock, Shylock, who also lives in the same city. And Shylock is also aware of Antonio. He is aware that there is a merchant businessman called Antonio who gives money for poor people without any expectation. Whereas Shylock is a money lender. He's a money lender. He lends money for interest by mortgaging some things. Mortgaging, like you have Marwadis, again, certain group of community people who live in cities, taluk centers, they lend money by mortgaging something, bankers, jewelry shops, they mortgage your jewels and they lend money, isn't it? And you have to pay interest for the money. And when you pay the initial amount, they will, or the initial amount, you have to you have to collect the things that you have mortgaged. Let it be the documents of a property or gold. In the same way, this Shylock is a Jew. In the play, he is a Jew. ಅವನು ಒಬ್ಬ ಯಹೂದಿ. You see, there is a religious connection between Jews, Christianity, and Jews and Christians and Muslims. They have got connection. They have got connection when it comes to Bible, Old Testament and New Testament. You can read that they have a kind of religious nexus bonding. Even there are references of Jesus in Bible. Jerusalem is the holy place for all the three religions. You have this Al-Aqsa Masjid located in Jerusalem, and Bethlehem is 20 kilometers from Jerusalem. Bethlehem, Jesus Christ's birthplace, is located near Jerusalem. And also Jews, who are the majority living in Israel. The entire Israel is dominated by Jews, and Jerusalem is located in Israel. And Jerusalem is the only place for all the three religions. And they have got some relationship. When it comes to religious issues, and Jews, you should not forget that they are the type of community or the people who are expecting the arrival of God in the form of Messiah or prophet. For them, God has not come in the form of any prophet. It's the only community which is expecting the arrival of the prophet. God in the form of prophet. ದೇವರ ಪ್ರವಾದಿಗೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಕಾಯ್ತಾ ಇರುವ ಜನಾಂಗ ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರೂ ಇದ್ರೆ ಅದು Jews. We have Rama and Krishna in Hindu mythology, Hindu religion. We have Buddha. Okay, Buddha is also a pravadi, and you have Muhammad prophet, and Jesus Christ, the Son of God, according to Christianity. So you all know that. And Jews, there are references about Jews. Even I think Judas are the people who crucify Jews. Who crucify Jesus. Who crucify Jesus. And Judas are the people who belong to Jewish community. Okay, this hatredness between the three communities, three religions, the top three religions of the world, again, they have got some religious hatredness. Okay, that takes you to many ages, back to many ages. So what I mean to say here is Christians do not like Jews. In the same way, Muslims do not like Jews. And Jews also have hatredness towards Christianity and Islam over Muslims. So this problem is again still existing. It is still there. It cannot be resolved. Okay, and people critics feel that the very projection, the way Shakespeare has projected Shylock in the play, is what? It's not so means it's not good. Means like in the sense like critics feel that it's not right. The way Shakespeare projected Shylock is not right. Means he has again presented Shylock as the chief villain in the play. In the way, in the way, Shylock, sorry, Shakespeare has become a racist here. He has become a racist by projecting a man who belongs to Jewish community as the villain in the play. So he has made was he has made the Jewish community appear as the most cunning and the cruel community. Okay, and critics feel that Shakespeare acts like a critic here. Sorry, acts like what? Like a racist here, like a racist here. So that is the what strong criticism that Shakespeare faced after this play was enacted and staged. Because Jews, are the minorities. Jews are the minorities living in Europe, and it is Israel. Israel is the only country which has large number of Jewish community where Jews are in majority, are in majority number. Whereas if you even India in India we have Jews. If you go to cities like Bombay, Delhi, you can see Jewish community living in scanty number, in few numbers. They are the minorities. So even in Europe, they are the minorities. So what happens here, Antonio? And you all know about Antonio. I told you about Antonio. Let us see what kind of relation. I think I don't know what had happened. There was a problem in the internet, probably, or there was a problem in the app. I don't know, but still, again, I hope I'm visible and audible now. I want your response, students. Okay, fine. As I told you, he was totally dependent on again on Antonio for money, who Bassanio, and Bassanio now comes to know that there is this an event, a particular event is taking place in Belmont. Belmont is the place which is located close to Venice in Italy. So he has to go there, and the Belmont has got an heiress. Heiress means one who takes care of gowns. She is the again heiress called Portia. Portia is the heiress of Belmont, and she is the one who is gowning, G-O-V-E-R-N-I-N-G, gowning the province called Belmont. She is living there. She is the heiress of the place called Belmont, and Bassanio comes to know that again she is a spinster. She is not married, and she has organized an event where she can pick where she can pick what a rightful rightful groom means, again, according to the will of her father. Our father has left a will at the time of death. Portia's father has left a will at the time of death that if Portia has to marry a suitable boy, she has to put him in a test called where the bridegroom has to pick what a correct cascade. A correct cascade. There are three types of cascades. One is of gold, one is of silver, another one is of copper. And the again out of the three cascades, one cascade consists of the Portia's image. One cascade consists of what? The Portia's image. And whomsoever picks the right cascade will marry Portia. It's like Swayamvara. Swayamvara, the kind of Swayamvara which you might have heard about, how Arjuna wins Draupadi in that Swayamvara, isn't it? It is Arjuna who wins Draupadi in Swayamvara. And even in even in Ramayana, you can see it is Lord Rama, how he wins Sita in Swayamvara. During those days, there was this practice of testing the talent or the skill or the physical strength, power, intelligence, everything. They used to test. They never used to give their daughter, the kings, okay, the princes. The princes were not, okay, they were not allowed to marry anybody they want. So during those days, this Vayamvara practice was there. And this in the city called Belmont, again, Portia was gowning, she was the heiress, and Bassanio comes to know that there is an event like Swayamvara event which he wants to take part. Even to attend that Swayamvara event like of cascade test of Portia, Bassanio doesn't have money. He has to go there. He wants to go there. For that, he needs the financial assistance of Antonio. So he goes to meet Antonio, his close friend. He asks him money. Before asking him the money, what he says, how often I have taken money from you? I feel ashamed. Huh? He has taken money even in the past. He feels ashamed to ask money quite often from Antonio. But Antonio, the large-hearted fellow, is not, he is not ready to listen to him because he is his close friend. He is ready to help him at any given point of time. So here comes your Bassanio. So Bassanio comes there and he has the money. Okay, with a lot of shy, ತುಂಬ ಅವನಿಗೆ ನಾಚಿಕೆ ಸಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಪದೇ ಪದೇ ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೇಳಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ಈ ಸೇಸ್ ಇನ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಬೆಸಾನಿಯೋ ಲೆಟ್ ಮಿ ರೀಡ್ ಔಟ್. Yes, to you Antonio, I owe the most. To you Antonio, Act 1, Scene 1, I owe the most in money and in love. And from your love, I have a warranty. To unburden all my plots and purposes. How to get clear of all the depths. How to get clear of all the depths I owe. So to you, Antonio, I owe the most in money and in love. So I owe so much of money. I have to give you so much of money, so much of love, because even it appears from this dialogue that Bassanio has borrowed money even in the past. Look at the reply of Antonio. I pray you, good Bassanio, let me know it. And if it stand as you yourself still do, within the eye of honor, be assured. Within the eye of honor, be assured. My purse, Nanna pocket purse, my purse, my wallet, my purse, my person, my character, my personality, my purse, my person, my extremist means, ನನ್ನದೆಲ್ಲ ಏನೇನಿದೆಯೋ ಎಲ್ಲ my extremist means lie all unlocked. ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ಲಾಕ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ನಿನಗೆ. It's not locked. Lie all unlocked to your occasions. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಸಂದರ್ಭಗಳಿಗೆ, ನಿನ್ನ ಅಗತ್ಯಗಳಿಗೆ ಯಾವಾಗೆಲ್ಲ ಬೇಕೋ, ಏನೆಲ್ಲ ಬೇಕೋ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಿನ್ನದೇ ತಗೋ. Okay, very very large hearted fellow. Okay, and you see again Bassanio repeats, I owe you much, and like a willful youth, that which I owe you is lost. But if you please to shoot another arrow, that self way which you did shoot the first, I do not doubt, as I will watch the aim, or to find both, or bring your later hazard back again, and thankfully rest debtor for the first. So Bassanio, in the very first scene of Act 1, we come to know that he is a spendthrift. ಅಂದರೆ ತುಂಬ ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಹಣನ, ವಿಲಾಸಿ ಜೀವನ. ಅವನು ಕಷ್ಟಪಟ್ಟು ದುಡಿದೇ ಇದ್ರು, he spends money even though he doesn't earn money with any hard labor. So Bassanio strikes us at first sight as being a spendthrift who lives much beyond his means. ಅಂದರೆ ಅವನ ಅಗತ್ಯಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ, ಅಗತ್ಯಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಶ್ರೀಮಂತಿಕೆಯಿಂದ ಜೀವನವನ್ನ ನಡೆಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ. ಯಾರು? ಬೆಸಾನಿಯೋ. ಅದು ನಮಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ Bassanio is a poor guy who is totally dependent on Antonio. Okay, but still he spends money like anything. He leads a lavish life. Depending on Antonio's money. Whereas poor Antonio's melancholy suffers from spiritual loneliness. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಒಂಥರ ಏಕಾಂತ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ Bassanio ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಯಾರೂ ಇಲ್ಲ ಸಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ವೆನಿಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. That is the reason why he loves Bassanio. So Antonio's melancholy, ekantate, suffers from the loneliness, and finds what? Emotional fulfillment in the friendship of Bassanio, in his friendship with Bassanio. So very very interesting. And Antonio again, but at the same time, Antonio says that right now I do not have money. I have invested all the money on my business. If you want money, you borrow it from anybody else. I can assure you that once I get the money, I'll pay back the money that you have borrowed from others. ನೀನು ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ಯಾರ ಹತ್ರನಾದ್ರೂ ಹಣವನ್ನು ಪಡೆದುಕೋ. ನಿನಗೆ ನನಗೆ ದುಡ್ಡು, ನಾನು ವ್ಯಾಪಾರ ವಹಿವಾಟಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ದುಡ್ಡನ್ನು ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನೋ ಅದು ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ವಾಪಸ್ ಬಂದಂಥ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ, ಸೊ ನನ್ನ ಹಡಗುಗಳು, when my ships returns to Venice, so after making money, so when my ships returns to Venice, I'll clear the debts, that if the money that you have borrowed from others. Antonio says, Act 1, Scene 2, therefore go forth, try what my credit can in Venice do. So ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ಹೇಳಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ಸಾಲ ತಗೋ ವೆನಿಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಓಕೆ, that shall be racked even to the uttermost, to furnish thee to Belmont, to fair Portia. ಸೊ ನಿನಗೆ ಪೋರ್ಷಿಯನ್ ನೋಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ, ಆ ಸುಂದರವಾದ ಪೋರ್ಷಿಯನ್ನ ನೋಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ನಿನಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಅಗತ್ಯ ಬೇಕು ಹಣ ಅಷ್ಟು ಪಡೆದುಕೋ. ಓಕೆ, ಟು ಫರ್ನಿಶ್ ದಿ ಟು ಬೆಲ್ಮಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಫೇರ್ ಪೋರ್ಷಿಯಾ. ಗೋ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ಲಿ ಇಂಕ್ವೈರ್, ಹೋಗು ವಿಚಾರಿಸು, ತಕ್ಷಣ ಹೋಗು ವಿಚಾರಿಸು. ಅಂಡ್ ಸೋ ವಿಲ್ ಐ, ನಾನು ಕೂಡ ಅವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ಕೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, ವೇರ್ ಮನಿ ಈಸ್, ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಹಣ ಅಂತ ವಿಚಾರಿಸೋಣ. ಅಂಡ್ ಐ ನೋ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಮೇಕ್ ಟು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಮೈ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟ್ ಆರ್ ಫಾರ್ ಮೈ ಸೇಕ್. ಸೊ ಡೋಂಟ್ ವರಿ, ನನ್ನ ಮೇಲಿನ ನಂಬಿಕೆಯಿಂದ ನೀನು ಹಣವನ್ನು ಎಲ್ಲಾದರೂ ಪಡ್ಕೋ. So, in cascade scene is a scene where to marry someone by choosing the right cascade is all the fancy and fairy tale. Adu nija jeevanadalli you cannot pick a rightful partner by cascade scene. Nija jeevanadalli you cannot pick someone by Swayamvara. It's highly impossible, isn't it? So cascade scene, the entire cascade scene is a fancy and fantasy tale which can't happen in real life. Can you think of Swayamvaras happening in real life? Okay, can you pick your bridegroom in Swayamvaras through Swayamvaras? It's highly difficult. Whereas Portia, a vivacious girl, Portia is a vivacious girl who wants to marry, but her desires are hampered. Her desires are hampered by her father's will. Okay, Portia displays her wit, intelligence or smartness and good sense. She is a dutiful daughter, beautiful and also duty bound. Duty, D-U-T-I-F-U-L, dutiful, D-U-T-I-F-U-L. She is a dutiful daughter. She is loyal to her father. She is loyal to her father. That's another interesting factor, because there is another girl called Jessica. Jessica is another female character from the same play. She is the daughter of Shylock. Jessica is the daughter of Shylock, who is not loyal to her father. Jessica is not loyal to her father, whereas Portia is very much loyal to her father, because she decides to marry according to her father's will. She doesn't want to cheat her father, her dead father. Her father is no more, but still she wants to marry according to his will. That shows that she is a loyal daughter. But at the same time, critics have come to the conclusion that Portia is the real hero of the play, because it is Portia's smartness or intelligence which overtakes all the other. She trespasses. She overshadows all the other characters in the play. Though the play is titled on Antonio as the Merchant of Venice, it is Portia who overshadows all the other characters in the play. That's another interesting factor. When then we come to know about Shylock in Act 1, Scene 3. Shylock is a notorious money lender. He is introduced in Act 1, Scene 3, and he is a Jew. And he is a Jew and he aids Christians. At the same time, though he is living in a Christian country like Italy, again, which is again Rome is the capital of Italy, and you have Venice, and this fellow, though living like a minority, though he is a minority, he hates, he dislikes Christians who are the majority in the city of Venice. So let us move on. So what happens later on? And at the same time, as I told you, this Bassanio comes to Shylock. This Bassanio comes to Shylock to borrow money. To borrow money. See, because Antonio has told him to borrow money from any other money lender. And once he gets the returns from the business, he is going to pay back the money that Bassanio has borrowed. So Bassanio comes and borrows money from Shylock. And look at this crook, Shylock. He demands what? Again, he doesn't give money without mortgaging anything. So Shylock has this habit because he gives money for interest. ಬಡ್ಡಿಗೆ ದುಡ್ಡನ್ನು ಹಣವನ್ನು ಕೊಡ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಕ್ಯಾರೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಇವನು. ಯಾರು? ವ್ಯಾಪಾರಸ್ಥ, ಏನೋ ಬಡ್ಡಿ ವ್ಯವಹಾರ ಮಾಡೋನು ಶೈಲಾಕ್, ಮನಿ ಲೆಂಡರ್, ಫಿನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್. ಸೊ ಹಣಕಾಸು ವ್ಯವಹಾರ ಮಾಡ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥವನು. So again, he is a pawnbroker or money lender, a banker, you can call. He lends money with interest, only for interest. So here what happens when Shylock comes and tells him that when Bassanio comes to meet Shylock, the money lender, Bassanio tells him that he has nothing to mortgage. ಅವನ ಹತ್ರ ಏನೂ ಇಲ್ಲ ಹಡ ಇಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ, ಚಿನ್ನ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಯಾವ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. But he can assure him, he assures him that he will return the money based on the promise of Antonio. Based on the promise of Antonio. So look at this crook Shylock. He demands for a bond. A treaty, negotiation agreement, bond, demands for a bond with a condition. What is that condition? If he fails to repay the money, he can take what he can take, the flesh of Antonio from any part of his body. So if you don't pay the money in time, I can take a pound of flesh from any part of Antonio's body. Antoniona ದೇಹದಿಂದ ಒಂದು ಪೌಂಡ್ ತೂಕ, a pound of flesh, ಒಂದು ಪೌಂಡ್ ತೂಕದಷ್ಟು ಮಾಂಸ. It might be his heart, it might be the flesh from thighs or any part of his body. So I am entitled to take any part of flesh, a pound of flesh from any part of his body. So that is the bond, agreement, the treaty or the negotiation that he wants Bassanio to come for. Because one thing we should not forget, that for Shylock, Antonio is a competitor. Because Antonio gives money without any interest for poor people, for the needy. Whereas Shylock gives money for interest. So he knows that Antonio is his competitor. And above all that, Antonio is a Christian businessman. And he wants to take revenge against Christians. At the same time, he wants to trap Antonio, the money lender, the merchant or the businessman who gives money without any expectation from poor or the needy. from the poor or the needy. So look at this bond treaty. So Shylock's legalistic shrewdness is very much legal. Is very much legal when it comes to lending money, but he is also shrewd. Shrewd. Shylock's legalistic shrewdness is on display. Is on display in this particular incident. So in contrast with, so is in contrast with Antonio. Antonio is generous. Antonio is large-hearted, generous, whereas this fellow is cunning, crook, hypocrite, isn't it? Hypocrite. So let us see what happens in Act 2. Act 2, again, you can see so many princes, kings come to attend, even the king of Morocco, okay, comes to attend the Swayamvara, okay, and he also fails. Again, the prince of Morocco is a braggart, does not suit Portia in fair and culture, though he is dark was at the same time he was brave. He was brave. The Morocco king is brave in the play, very valor, brave, very, very brave. At the same time, it's known for his valor, braveness, but he was dark in color. He was not fair enough. So you can see at the same time he fails in that cascade test. Then comes the king of Turkey, the prince of Turkey, okay, and so many other people to test their luck. Then comes Bassanio, okay. Bassanio comes there, and what happens? He succeeds. He succeeds in that test. He picks the right casket. In that test, which consisted the image of the portrait of Portia. So he picks that right casket, and Bassanio again becomes the right bridegroom for Portia. And Bassanio also tells Portia that what all the risks that he has taken to reach Belmont, to come to Belmont from Venice. He has borrowed money from a money lender called Shylock. So who has mortgage, who has signed a treaty or a bond paper where he was forced to mortgage a pound of flesh of his friend called Antonio. He reveals everything to Portia. And Portia, again, she is curious to know about Antonio. And she decides to solve this problem. She is smart, intelligent. She knows how to handle this case. Critics also say that Portia in The Merchant of Venice is the best woman character out of all the women characters of Shakespeare. Portia stands out to be the best woman character out of all the other women characters of Shakespearean plays, because she has the best human qualities in her. She is beautiful, she is intelligent, she is brave, she is rich. She has all the virtuous qualities that you expect in a perfect woman. So that is the reason why critics have huge praise or respect to Portia. Whereas you have Jessica, the daughter of Shylock. Okay, she is in love with Lorenzo, who is a Christian. Jessica is the daughter of Shylock, who is a Jew, and Jessica is in love with a Christian. You have Jessica in contrast with Portia. Jessica, the daughter of Shylock, is the daughter only in blood, is the daughter only in blood, not in manners. Not in manners. She is sad that Lancelot Gobo is living. She loves Lorenzo, friend of Bassanio, a Christian. She wants to elope. She wants to elope because her father is a miserly, again, a tyrant. Okay, I mean, he's my again. Confused. Shylock was confused. Again, in the play, he is confused. At the same time, he is a tyrant. He is very, very terrifying character. He is. Okay, tyrant, you can say. And while, like, she wants to marry Lorenzo, and she is also aware that Shylock will not accept again his daughter to marry Lorenzo, or he won't accept Lorenzo as his son-in-law. She knows what kind of attitude her father has. And Act 2, Scene 5, this scene shows the tender side of Shylock. Then what actually his daughter tries to project, a trusting father. He is a trusting father who leaves the home, and the keys to take care. He leaves the keys and the home with his daughter to take care of. So what happens there in the scene? Jessica elopes with Lorenzo with all the money and the jewelry of Shylock that was kept as mortgage by so many other people. She elopes, or absconds with Lorenzo by taking away all the money and the jewelry of Shylock. Okay, and the keys to take care of with his daughter Jessica. But Jessica proves disloyal. She proves disloyal. Whereas you have Portia, who proves to be loyal to her father. And Shakespeare's dramatic skill is to be noted here with, he compares Jessica with Portia, a cheating daughter versus honest and loyal daughter. Okay, hostile Christian society forces a Jew, forces a girl again who belongs to a minority community, okay, to cheat. Again, you can see that's another interesting aspect or matter in the play. You can see the hostile Christian society of Venice, forcing Jessica, a minority girl, to elope with a Christian guy called Lorenzo, sorry, by stealing all the money and jewelry along with her. So, but there is some justification for his vindicativeness. And that is the reason why Shylock is unhappy with Christians. Because majority of the Christians do not treat the minorities like Jews. They don't treat them that well. That's the reason why Shylock do not like the majority Christians. The scene serves two purposes. That is, it hardens Shylock Hello. I think the network or the connection was restored. Okay, again the connection is restored. Can you see me now? Am I visible? It's okay. So as I told you, there are three factors, two to three factors. Again, why Shylock wants to take revenge. One is her daughter was forced to elope with a Christian guy, and she proves to be disloyal. At the same time, again, the already existing hatredness towards Christians now it intensifies. It intensifies because Shylock again. Is nowhere now want to forgive. He cannot forgive the Christians now because they have cheated with his daughter. They have again because they have forced his daughter to marry a Christian guy called Lorenzo, and his daughter has eloped with him by taking away all the money and the jewelry. She has cheated him, and again it is like adding salt to the wound. He has a different opinion or notion or attitude towards Christians. Now it's like it doubles its hatredness towards Christians or Christianity. So you can see too much thought is again Portian's residence. You can see there. I'll just skip a few pages here. We'll see what happens there in Act 3. And at the same time, Shakespeare's Shylock is not a monster. He's not a monster of wickedness, but a credible human being. It is natural to have such kind of feeling. If you are a minority living amongst majority, if you are cornered, if you are outnumbered or cornered, this is bound to happen. This kind of feeling is natural to have, isn't it? So Shylock wants to take revenge. So what happens after 3 months? After 3 months, when the ships do not return from different parts of the world, Antonio's ships do not return because they are caught in the storm. They are caught in the storm and they don't return in time. They don't return in time. And Bassanio has borrowed 3,000 ducats, 3,000 ducats currency, 3,000 ducats by mortgaging his friends 1 pound flesh, a pound of flesh. Now, after the period, again, after the time bound, once the time bound is completed, you can see again Shylock reminds Bassanio about the treaty, about the agreement. Okay, about the agreement. You can see Act 3, Scene 2, which is the center of the play and the focal point of the play, where Bassanio reveals everything to Portia, and you can see the cascade story, the Bond story, the Lorenzo Jessica episode, and we will see what happens later on. And when the ships fail to return to the Venice, Shylock is all set to fight the legal suit against Antonio. So he pulls Antonio to face the legal calamities. So the scene tells us in Act 3, Scene 3 tells us that Antonio's life is in danger. He is soon to be tried in a court of law. Act 3, Scene 3, so which is the center of the play, which is the art of the play. We come to know that Shylock is all set to fight in the court. Okay, in the court of law, again to fight a suit. So he wants to fight a legal suit against Antonio because Antonio has failed to pay the money which he has borrowed, which Bassanio has borrowed in Antonio's name Now Antonio has to give a pound of flesh according to the agreement from any part of his body which Shylock demands. Any part of the body which Shylock demands. So Portia makes a plan now and prepares herself to live for Venice. So she decides to live for Venice. Portia, an intelligent girl, she comes in disguise as a lawyer. Her cousin lawyer. There was a cousin there in the play. You will come to know that there is a cousin called Balthazar. Balthazar. Balthazar is the cousin of Portia, who is a lawyer in profession. Who is a lawyer in profession. Portia now comes in disguise as Balthazar to fight a legal suit on behalf of Antonio because she wants to save Antonio, the same Antonio who has helped Bassanio. Bassanio, the close friend of Antonio, now who is engaged with whom? With Portia. They have exchanged rings because Bassanio has won the cascade test. He has won the cascade test. They have exchanged the rings. They have engaged. They are engaged now, and Portia wants to help her husband's friend. Husband's friend would be husband's friend Antonio. Got it? So, and what happens? She decides to live for Venice in disguise. Okay, as a lawyer. Okay, as a lawyer called Balthazar, her cousin who lives in Padna, in the city called Padna. Okay, Dr. Bellario, not Balthazar. Bellario, who lives in the city called Padna. So what happens there later on? She comes. The scene is the lighter vein, like in scene Act 3, scene 4, 5. Okay, again, Act 4, very, very interesting scene. Portia has come in disguise. So even now, I think it is time. I think I'll continue in the next class. Is that okay? Shall I continue in the next class? It's already 11:32. I'll take a leave from here and I'll continue in the next class. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. In this session, I am going to talk about the play, restoration play, written by William Congreve. The title of the play is The Way of the World, and it is the best example for restoration drama. And let me start my session with giving you a background regarding the restoration period. And the term restoration drama usually applied to the plays written during the period from 1660 to 1700 or 1710. And but it is not the actual date according to the critics. At that time, Charles II was restored to the English throne in 1660. By 1700, Charles II had died, and his brother James, he had reigned for 5 years and had been deposed in the Glorious Revolution or Bloodless Revolution of 1688. And William and Mary had reigned for 12 years, and this time, William Congreve, the greatest restoration playwright, was born until 10 years after the restoration. So, The Way of the World was the first play presented by him when he was at the age of 30. And by that time, some of the most obvious as well as the most notorious features of the period no longer existed or existed only in much weaker forms. So this is I can say, the relationship between the court and theatre. And regarding the relationship of court and theatre, there were more than merely casual. And among Charles II's first acts after he returned to throne was the reopening of the playhouses, because he just wanted to give the public a soothing effect, and he was very much interested in art and theater. So he again, as soon as he reigned the throne and his reign started, he opened the playhouses and that had been closed by the Puritans of 17th century. So he was the patron of the theater. I'm talking about Charles too, and patron. He was the patron, and he used to give more patronage for the theater, arts, and so on. And he attended. He himself even attended frequently, and he was fond of a very merry play. He doesn't. He was not interested in tragedy or tragic plays, but he wanted to watch the play, or he was so much interested in the plays written in order to give the soothing effect by their merrymaking, or some just he wants the place, or he wishes to watch the place which used to give him a kind of a joy. So since in fact in the early years of restoration, the theatre was dependent very greatly upon the support of nobility and its hangers on, because they expected some kind of support from the court, and even I'm talking about the King's Court. Okay, so now many characters in the comedies, especially in this genre, we could able to find the restoration comedies and restoration drama, actually, which gave way for comedy of manners and comedy of villains. Okay, so this was many characters in the comedies were based on the well-known figures in the court, and many episodes echoed scandals that were known. And by the 1690s, if not earlier, I hope, a change in the court's attitude occurred that inevitably affected the character, especially the theatre. William and Mary did not follow the footsteps of the Queen's uncle Charles too. Instead, the overreaction to Puritanism started, and it had run its course. And soon after, the Charles II's reign got over, and that respectability, especially, was reasserting its importance in the life of the upper and middle classes. And this play, what I am talking about, The Way of the World, written by William Congreve, which this comes under Hardcore 1.3, Restoration and 18th Century English. Hope you are following me. Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is from Hardcore 1.3, Restoration and 18th Century English Literature. And block, I think, block 4. Okay, yeah, let me move on to the play. Let me not give a biographical details of the writer, because this is not important, but still I'll just give you a gist of it, because we all know that William Congreve, who lived between 1670 and 1729, he was born in Yorkshire, England, and as his father was an officer in the army and the commander of a garrison near Cork in Ireland, Congreve was educated at there is a place called Kilkenny, and then at Trinity College at Dublin. When he was a slightly younger college mate of Jonathan Swift, you know, Jonathan Swift was also a very prominent figure in English literature. So he was a younger college mate, which means that he was junior to Jonathan Swift in Trinity College. So in 1691, he was admitted to the Middle Temple in London to study law. And it is likely that, like Whitwood in this play, what I'm going to talk about, The Way of the World, his interest in studying law was only a means to take him to London, the center of all excitement. And how we Kannadigas, we feel that Bangalore is the center of all kinds of education and all sort of excitement. So even London at that particular point of time. I'm talking about 17th century. So by 1692, William Congreve was already a recognized member of the literary world, because I told you at the age of 30 he started writing even his first play enacted, not only written, enacted on the stage. And his first play, The Old Bachelor, was first acted in January 1693, before he was 23 years old. Just imagine what were we doing at the age of 23. But William Congreve, he had already published and even enacted that play before he reached 23 years. and it was the first play was The Old Bachelor, and it was triumphantly successful. And his other plays, The Double Dealer or Love for Love, The Mourning Bride, and finally The Way of the World, these are all followed at short intervals, but the last of them was presented in I think March 1700. So for the rest of his life, Congreve wrote no plays, and The Way of the World was not successful on the stage. But this disappointment may have had something to do with his decision. But he engaged in controversy with Jeremy Collier on the mortality of the stage, and a frustrating. He even had some frustrating experience by that, and he suffered from gout and bad sight, and he had some physical problem, and what's that, illness, I can say. And he became an elder statesman of letters at the age of 30 itself, and he was honored by the nobility and highly respected by the younger writers, his followers. And in his later years, Congreve conducted an ambiguous romance with Henrietta. She was a Duchess of Marlborough, and when he died, she erected a tablet to his memory in Westminster Abbey. So she also ordered a life-size figure of him and had it, I think, had it seated in his regular place at her table. So the feet were swathed in bandages, and the doctor treated Congreve for gout daily. So he had some health issues at the, I think, soon after he reached, after 30s, I think in his late 30s. So this rather surprising memento cast its own odd light on the Duchess, perhaps on Congreve, and certainly on the status of the medical profession at that time, because he could not able to recover from it. So this is about his biographical details, and whom he married and what he did at his younger days, and which college he attended to study law, and his graduation and so on. And as I told you that he was a junior batchmate to Jonathan Swift, another prominent literary figure in English history, English literature. So, what is how he influenced the romantic comedy, sorry, the Restoration comedy? Because since we are talking about the Restoration period, so this is all important, and how the comedy of manners and comedy of errors, they which came into existence, and how theater got importance, and it started playing a very prominent role in 17th century England. This is very important. And what kind of a audience they had at that time, 17th century? So the nature of the audience is very important, because they influence on all art forms, right? And if some movie becomes successful, and just imagine the taste of the audience, and because the director has to tune his movies according to the tastes of the audience, right? So even theater also, the nature of audience is very very essential, very important, and they influence all kinds of art forms, right? We all know this, theatrical art especially. But it is only one factor. But attempts to explain if such a thing is possible, Restoration drama must consider other threads of influence as well. Like because the theaters were closed between, as I told you, 1642 and 1660, there was at one time a tendency to treat the Restoration drama as if it had no connections with the main drama, okay, mainstream of English drama, because English drama was completely different, because they used to enact the stories, histories, and histories of kings and queens, like that. And basically they used to what completely relying on the mythology or some myths. Okay, they used to have some histories background of the royal family, like that. But this Restoration drama, this is completely different. And they also started audience also started feeling that there is no connection between the mainstream of English drama. So this was on the face of it inaccurate. People had seen Jacobean plays. Jacobean plays were there to read and what enjoy, and even to watch. And Jacobean plays formed the bulk of the repertoire of the two theatrical companies after the Restoration. And at the same time, the courtiers returning after varying lengths of the time spent in France, and they had seen French plays. And we might therefore list the main threads that made up that many splendored thing that is called Restoration comedy. Okay, before Restoration comedy came into existence, Jacobean plays they took charge of theater and they influenced the theater very much. Then there existed an English tradition of social comedy after this restoration comedy. Before this restoration comedy and after that Jacobean plays, there existed a complete different English tradition of social comedy. They treated the love game with lightness. That is, lightness means with humor and some kind of chivalry, ribaldry, and wit. Okay, so such comedies are associated with Beaumont and Fletcher, and among others. Beaumont and Fletcher's they were the main pillars, I can say, of the English tradition of social comedy. So the plays included satire of social types, the fops, the parents, and the vain women. They're all the part of this this social comedy of English tradition. At the same time, the English comic tradition included a different kind of comedy of character types, like Ben Jonson comedy of humors, right? We have comedy of manners and comedy of humors, and which emphasize the way in which people's characters would be strongly bent in one direction. Okay, so Ben Johnson's plays were also intensely satiric. They wanted to satirize the society where they live in, and by attacking above all the sins of avarice, lechery, and hypocrisy. Okay, because they are all attacking the sins of avarice, lechery, and hypocrisy. Sounds like adultery. Lechery means nothing but adultery. So there was a strong French influence which led to elegance of plotting, characterization, and acting. The French emphasis on correctness, which was probably a salutary antidote to the casual attitude to structure of many Elizabethan and Jacobean dramatists. Got it? Hope you are following me. The French plays, especially the Jacobean plays or French plays, they started influencing the characterization and the acting. Okay, the French emphasis on correctness was probably laudable at that time, and many Elizabethan and Jacobean dramatists were also deeply influenced by this in French plays. So, however, one characteristic of French comedy, that unity of plot, which was never adopted by these English comedians, comedy writers, or dramatists. So, English comedies had plots and subplots and generally an excess of action. And the third most important influence on this comedy, restoration comedy, was the patronage of the court. And as I told you earlier, that during those times, theaters were completely relying and expecting support from the court, right, the nobility. So at this time they were also influenced, and they were, I can say, they were very fortunate that they got the patronage from the court. So very often what occurred in the play had to be thought of as a private joke or a comprehensive only to those if they knew. So these are the ways in which these various threads of influence, French influence and Jacobean influence, and on the other hand, English social comedies influence, which showed themselves varied kinds of experiences from dramatist to dramatist, and even their experience also differs from one to another. So one dramatist called Wycherley, and he might borrow a plot from Moliere. He was a French dramatist, but then add subplots and make the sympathetic character coaches and their antagonist, and more crudely wishes to intensify the satire. And the next, another very brilliant French comedy was The Plain Dealer, which is a brilliant English comedy based on the French comedy. Okay, The Plain Dealer is an English comedy, but which was influenced by French comedy. I think a lame misanthrope, the title of the French comedy was. So some comic writers they started following the footsteps of Ben Jonson. And William Congreve himself, he professed an occasional dependence on the Johnsonian humor. I told you, comedy of humor, which was introduced by Ben Jonson to the English theatre, right? So Congreve himself also professed an occasional dependence on this Johnsonian humor. William Congreve did not want to follow the footstep of Shakespeare to what not only either to follow the comedy or tragic comedies or tragedies. Instead, he wanted to follow the humors that too Ben Jonson humor, Johnsonian humor. And the other dramatist whose works are not generally anthologized for their plays, they are not among the best, and instead they depended on scandal, bawdry, and the mirroring of their narrow world activities. And finally, William Congreve represents the attitude of the period at its best. This is where he stands unique because he follows and he represents the attitude of his period at his best. So the Raquel was no longer was a hero, and Mirabelle is a descendant of a Raquel, but compared with the earlier specimens, he displays urbanity, grace, and decorum. In his place, we can find some kind of dignity, decorum, and the gracefulness of the character, and even the act. Okay, even the setting was also very nice, and I can say some kind of moderate way he started presenting his plays. So his comedies are concerned as comedies have been through the ages, especially as though we know, and since Shakespeare, we have seen comedies, right? But how differently one dramatist or any kind of dramatist has to display or expose or explain or portray his characters through the touch of humor. That is very important. That's why, as though we have seen these comedies through the ages, with love and money frequently complicated by parental opposition and so on, his approach, especially William Congreve's approach, however, is balanced, and love without money would be a problem in his place normally, but money without love and the cynic's aim is not the goal in his comedies. Likewise, William Congreve's he abhors the sentimental attitude that love will result in the individuals somehow being submerged in each other. He insists that lovers preserve their integrity as individuals, according to him. And though they are far, they are not together, and they are even during their part ways. But according to him, he believes in each lover, he or she preserves their integrity as individual. So love is not metaphysical according to him, and neither sentimental, and nor a form of sacrifice. So these are the things he tries to portray through his comedy in a very practical manner, not in a metaphysical manner. And that's why he says, according to him, love is not metaphysical, neither sentimental, and nor sacrifice, nor a kind of sacrifice. So, on the other hand, within this context, it is not merely carnal and not a thinly disguised lust, but it includes trust, dignity, and mutual respect. See how beautifully he portrays. And in this context, though he says that love is not metaphysical and it is not sentimental, or neither it is a form of a sacrifice, but still he says that it is merely not merely a carnal or a thinly disguised lust, but it includes trust, dignity, and the mutual respect. Hope you are following me and you have understood me so far. Yeah. Can you able to hope you're I'm audible enough now? You're not facing any uh, hurdles like yesterday's classes, right? Okay. If you have any doubts, you can drop me a message in the chat box so that I can answer your question. I think Preeti, what you told me, I'm not getting. Yeah. Not understand but slow. What do you mean by that? I really don't know. You have to concentrate. Then only you can able to understand what I am teaching. Because without a mere knowledge of the basic thing of our teaching or whatever the text, you cannot understand anything. It shows that you haven't read this play. Yeah, let me go back to the way of the world. And I told you I was giving you introduction to William Congreve and introduction to the Restoration drama, and how Restoration comedy is different from English comedy and French comedy, and who were the influencer and who were the leaders or playwrights by whom William Congreve got what I can say, inspired or inspiration from. And these are the things so far I have discussed. Then, what is the plot of the play, the the Way of the World? I have been telling you that this is the play, or restoration comedy written by William Congreve. So, what is the problem of the plot here? And what is the storyline of this here? Because of its striking characterization and brilliant dialogue, The Way of the World is generally considered to be the finest examples of restoration comedy. I told you repeatedly that if someone asks you, can you please give me the finest example for restoration comedy, you can name it. The Way of the World. Because of its striking characterization and brilliant dialogue, this play has been regarded as the finest example of restoration comedy. And if I go fast, you can't understand. So I am slowing down myself in order to make you understand what I'm teaching here. And at least I know that only some people are aware of, or some people may be thorough with this text. And in without any background or without giving any introduction to the context, what I am teaching, the play has written, you cannot understand what it becomes somewhat like Latin and Greek to you. That's why, as I told you in the very beginning of my lecture, that this is the restoration comedy. Nevertheless, it was not successful when it was first presented in 1700. And although the English audiences, like the French, they were accustomed to plots and subplots and to a great deal of action in their place, they were confused by the amount of activity crammed into a single day. The Way of the World, I'm talking about the Way of the World is a title of the play, which had only a single action to which everything was related. But it include a scheme and a counterplot to frustrate the scheme, and then moves to foil the counterplot. And there were too many episodes, events, reversals, and discoveries, and most of them huddled in the last acts, especially. And they demanded too much of the audience, especially they demanded the readers attention very much, or the audience attention very much. If the difficulty was ever overcome in a performance, it was only when actors and directors were completely conscious of their problem. So every play must have a start in the traditional phrase, right? So here we have a different kind of devices or events, coincidences, rehearsals, and discoveries. So that William Congreve, I can say that he is successful in writing this play and even making it to an act. I told you, though it was not successful when it was staged in 1700, but it became successful after, or I think, 17th century. And why it has a loose ends of the plot? And because not only we need to discuss the positive aspect of the play, and even what is the drawback in this play. Although there seems to be the usual happy ending to this comedy, The Way of the World, which leaves a number of loose ends that add to the confusion sometimes. So it is difficult to see where Mrs. Fennell's future is satisfactorily resolved. See, in this play we have quite number of big number of characters. To start with Mrs. Fennell, and then comes Mirabelle, Millamant, and another character Mrs. Marwood. Okay, and there are so many characters. And let me give you a list of characters. Then only you can able to understand what I'm preaching. To start with, Mirabel is a what young man, and he is the hero of this play, and he is in love with Millamant. Okay, in a just form I'm trying to give you. Then comes Millamant, and she is a very young, attractive, and charming lady, graceful lady, and who is in love with and loved by Mirabel, a hero, and she is the ward of Lady Wishford. Lady Wishford is actually she is the, I think we can say, guardian of Millamant. Okay, because she is the niece of a Lady Wishford, long dead husband. So she is a first cousin of Mrs. Fennel. And Fenal, another character, a man about town, and he is not trustworthy. And he and Mirabel were friends in the beginning of the play. And we also, and both of them, they know each other well. And as people do who move on in the same circles, and however they do not really like each other, both of them they know each other well, but at the same time there is not such a kind of good friendship between Fenal and Mirabel. And Fenal later married to his wife, Mrs. Fenal, to gain or to get her property, because she was inherited a huge property by her first husband. Okay, so Mrs. Fenal, actually she is the wife of second sorry, I think she is the wife of Fenal, and he is his her second husband, and she is the daughter of Lady Wishford. Okay, and she was a wealthy young widow when the play opens, and when she married Fenal, and she is Millamant's cousin, and she was also a Mirabel's mistress earlier, and later we come to know, the audience, presumably after her husband died. So next comes Mrs. Marwood, another, I can say, not untrustworthy character and a villainous character, and she is a Fenal's mistress. And it does appear that, however, that she was and perhaps still is, she is in love with Mirabel too. Just imagine, not only young ladies are behind Mirabel, even the old women. Mrs. Marwood, and even sometimes Lady Wishford also, in the course of the play, she also falls in love with Mirabel. And this love is not returned, but Mirabel, he is ardently in love with Millamant herself. Okay, then comes the minor character, young Whitwood. Young Whitwood, he is a fop, and he came to London from the country to study law. And later, he is a man about the town. Again, he is just he portrayed by an author or by a playwright like a man about town, urban man, and he has pretensions of being a wit, but actually he is not witful. Witful means intelligent, and he quotes Millamant, but not seriously, and she is merely the fashionable lady or a belle of the moment. Millamant, every man wants to marry such kind of a woman, and sometimes Millamant, he is somewhat like a what bluest eye girl, like that. Okay, then blue eyed girl in that place. So then comes Petulant, and he is also a minor character, and she is he is a friend of Whitwood, and his name is very indicative of his character, especially of his name. And then Lady Wishfort, I told you that she is a vain woman, and she is, I think, 55 years old when the play opens. And when we in audience gets introduced to this character, then who still has pretensions to beauty. Lady Wishford, though she is 55, she doesn't feel that she is old. She is an old woman, and she doesn't want to accept and admit that. So still she has pretensions to beauty, and she is the mother of Mrs. Fennel, I told you, and the guardian of Millamant, heroine of this play. So she is herself in love with Mirabel, I told you, although she is now spiteful because he offended her vanity. Then comes Sir Wilful Whitwood, and he is the elder brother of young Whitwood, and he is around 40 years old and is planning to take a grand trip to Europe that was usually made by young men to complete their education. But he is doing at the age of 40. So he is Lady Wishfort's nephew, a distant non-blood relative of Millamant, and Lady Wishfort's choice as a suitor for Millamant's hand. Then comes Waitwell. There are many characters like Waitwell, who is actually Mirabel's valet. At the beginning of the play, we could able to find that he has just been married to Foible, Lady Wishfort's maid. Okay, that's what I told you. In this play, you have a number of characters you need to concentrate on. So Foible was Lady Wishfort's maid, Waitwell was a friend of Mirabel, and Waitwell marries Foible. Got it? So he masquerades as Sir Roland and Mirabel's non-existent uncle and woos Lady Wishford. Then we have Mincing, a character called Mincing. She is Millament's maid. Fireball, Lady Wishford's maid. Then another character called Peg. It is a maid in Lady Wishford's house. So these are all the characters we can able to find in display. So hope you are following what I am saying. Please avoid your private chats in this classes, because these classes are meant for in order to gain some knowledge about this. You can have your discussion in your there is a group in a Telegram app. Okay, yeah. Regarding the summary of this play, I am talking about as the way of the world. What is the plot line or what is the storyline of this play? So in this play, we have most characters, and we may sometimes ignore the rather, or sometimes we praise the character whom we address, and that praise is a convention of the time.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yes, a very warm good afternoon, dear students. I welcome you all to this fourth day online classes sessions. So far, we have studied, the general prologue by Geoffrey Chaucer, and we also studied, Christopher Marlowe's The Duck of Faustus in the first paper. And then I've taught you the Epilogue, and today I'm going to teach you the Artco paper 4, that is Shakespearean Sonnets and Criticism. In that particular paper, probably in the next class, I'll take up, the Shakespearean paper exclusively. And this particular session, I'll take up this paper, that is Shakespearean Sonnets and Criticism. So I was talking about yesterday, the criticism, which means, the kind of a judicious and a didactic approach, because whatever the observation made by the critic, that is, AC Bradley, in his essay The Substance of Shakespearean Tragedy, the Shakespearean tragedy, there you are understand that how a critic, a 20th century critic, he criticizes the text of a great writer, the dramatist, that's a Shakespeare. So which means his approaches should be a very clear. His approaches should be accurate, accuracy, the perfection, and then he has to apply his insightful criticism. So criticism means the insightful opinions, which is consensuously agreed and judiciously made, and a didactic and a moral approach. Okay. So I think other people are able to listen. I think there is no problem now. This voice and the camera is very clear. Probably you may be having some internet issues now. So the students are requested to attend through, your student link. Most of you are, I heard, so that you are attending through faculty's link. Don't do that. You are given a different link called student link. There you have to connect. So I think the voice is clear to other people. Okay, and so here, AC Bradley, what does he do here? What is the argument of AC Bradley in this entire essay? That's the substance of Shakespearean tragedy, and we have four eminent distinguished critics. One is AC Bradley, Wilson Knight, and Carolyn Spurgeon, and Dr. Samuel Johnson. So among these four important criticism, I'll teach you today AC Bradley's this text. Generally, it will be for 10 marks, and I want you to listen it very carefully, with attentively. So, coming back to AC Bradley, his text, that is the Shakespearean tragedy, written in 1904. Okay, fine, written in 1904, a group of published lectures. So this book consists of lectures. He's giving lectures on Hamlet. Is another important. Some called Hamlet is a failed drama, but still it is a classic. And Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and the Macbeth. Okay, so as maintained an honored position in the field of Shakespearean studies. So his entire Shakespearean tragedy, it is a book collection of lectures delivered by A.C. Bradley. So here, the Bradley, while giving due attention to the text, approaches the plays through the characters and their independent lives as implied in the text. Because all the characters of Shakespeare, you call them as a flesh and blood character. They appear more like a day-to-day character. So they are very much appealing to the current scenario. This is one thing. And generally, when we talk about Shakespearean tragedies, what are the common features? For example, Shakespearean tragedies, when you talk about, you have this, common features. The common features such as, what is that? The tale of suffering. So you should keep in your mind the common common features of Shakespearean tragedy is that it's a tale of suffering. You come across there are many characters that suffer, and then there'll be a tragic hero. The tragic hero, for example, Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, or King Lear. So they are the tragic heroes because they have their own weakness, so they led their own tragedy, for which we call it as character is destiny. Yesterday, I used the word So the character is destiny means through their own weakness they led the tragic death. So destiny's character, in the sense, it is already a dramatist, a playwright, as fixed conditions of a character, so and so. For example, Greek tragedies, because we know what happens to the writer in the beginning itself, because the chorus will come and tells, which we won't come across in Shakespearean tragedies. Remember, the chorus will never appear. So here the Greek tragedies, the chorus, there the life story is pretty distinct. So there is a distinction made by the Greek tragedies and the Shakespearean tragedies. Greek tragedies known for destiny is character, whereas Shakespearean tragedy it is character destiny. ಈ ಎರಡು ಪದಗಳನ್ನ ನೀವು ಯಾವುದೇ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕೂ ಮರಿಬಾರದು. ಒಂದು character is destiny ಅಂತ ಬಂದ ತಕ್ಷಣ the first thing that you should remember it is A.C. Bradley term. He's the one who used the term. Where in his criticism, that is Shakespearean tragedy, written in 1904, where he gives lectures on four important plays. One is Hamlet, and Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. That you should remember. So after that, there is a tragic flaw. There's a tragic flaw. As I told you, the tragic flaw andre ಒಂದು weakness ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. So I told you yesterday, the weakness of Hamlet is his indecisiveness. The weakness of Othello is a jealousy. I told he's jealous and super suspicious, and the Macbeth is over ambitious, and and then King Lear, he's very much credulous. That means he believes people easily. And after that, the role of fate. The role of fate has become very common in Shakespearean tragedies. After that, we have a conflict, and there is a poetic justice. It's a common theme in Shakespearean tragedies. And then the moral lesson. So there is also a moral lesson that we come across in Shakespearean tragedies. So these are 8 important features are very much reflect in Shakespearean tragedies. One is a tale of suffering, a tragic hero, a tragic flaw, and the role of fate, and the supernatural elements and conflict, poetic justice, the moral lesson. So these are all the part and parcel, the very important, crucial, features that you come across in Shakespearean tragedies. So here, you are expecting, you are learning how, A.C. Bradley's, he's put forth his, viewpoint or argument. For example, now here, I told you yesterday that, the first tragedy that he discusses here is, what is that? The first tragedy he talks about is Hamlet. So let us see what are the viewpoint of A.C. Bradley towards Hamlet. So Shakespeare is regarded, probably the greatest tragedy writer in the world. True, his tragedies are developed deeply psychological and take us into the depth of human minds. So this is the first thing that you should remember. So what is that? His tragedies are, once again, features. The features are 8 features. One is, it is a tale of suffering. Okay, how it's a tale of suffering? I told you the Shakespearean tragedy, the story of suffering. There are many characters. The characters like Romeo and Juliet, Antony and Cleopatra, the Desdemona, and the Cordelia, and many innocent characters. They suffer a lot. See, the major drawback of Shakespeare, as Samuel Johnson tells that Shakespeare, he sacrificed innocent people for the convenience. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವನ ಕನ್ವೀನಿಯನ್ಸ್ ತಕ್ಕಂಗೆ ಪ್ಲೇನ ಬರೀತಾನೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. For example, the best reason is, if you look at Othello, he suffers a good character called Desdemona. The death of the Desdemona, the moment you read the play and you feel so sorry for Desdemona's plight. How come Shakespeare, he treats a very innocent character, sacrifice for the convenience. And even his Cordelia, for that matter, very innocent character who was very true to her nature, to the father, but the father left her in the lurch. He did not give the property. So all good characters are treated, badly. Justice is not given over there. So there is always the moral instruction in Shakespearean tragedy. Despite of that, A.C. Bradley, we find some lacunas, some problem, some weakness of Shakespeare, some drawbacks. That we could see further. So I told you there is the tale of suffering is the number 1. Number 2, the tragic hero. The concept of tragic hero is quite common in Shakespearean plays. And then, the another one is the tragic flaw. The tragic flaw is that all the characters, they have some, the flaw in their, they have some weakness, they have there is a catastrophe. They tend to do some mistake, and after that, the role of fate. It's a common in Shakespearean plays, and then the supernatural elements. For example, the use of ghost in Hamlet, even in Macbeth. There you have the ghost which appear. For example, in Hamlet, the ghost of Hamlet's father tells him to take revenge for his murderer. Remember, in the Hamlet, his father ghost, come and tells Hamlet to take the revenge on the person who killed his father. So the ghost is quite common, and in Macbeth also, remember the three witches, the supernatural elements, and they come as this supernatural elements. So that's the reason in Shakespearean plays the supernatural elements are quite common. And another one, it's a conflict. For example, we have this external and the internal conflicts we could see in Shakespeare's plays. And for example, nature versus nurture. For example, good and evil, good and bad people, and this kind of a conflict and the binaries, that we could see in his plays. And the poetic justice, we should also remember how far Shakespeare gives a poetic justice to the character. So this poetic justice is quite a common feature in his plays. And the moral lesson. And the moral lesson, there is an ultimate power which shapes our lives and controls our human existence. Because every text has its own, the some sort of dictum. ಒಂದು ಸಿದ್ಧಾಂತವನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರೆದಿರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ. So they all give some instruction to the reader. So the moral lesson, it is the last point of the common features of Shakespearean tragedies. So I was talking about the Hamlet. The first text that A.C. Bradley takes up to criticize in his text is that Hamlet. And regarding Hamlet, what is the problem of Hamlet? Hamlet is a story of a murder and the revenge. It has been transformed by Shakespeare into a great work of art because of his psychological insight. It is still called as a greatest text, classic, but some have called it as the failed drama. Okay, like the modern critics like Cleon Brook called it as a failed drama because of the character's inconsistency, the character's indecisiveness, because he's not able to take a decision. He can't kill his own uncle because he's the one who killed his father, and he can't kill his uncle, and he always thinks that whether to do it or not, to be or not, to be or not to be. So that is the dilemma of this character. So Hamlet, he suffered from psychological insight, and this play is a psychological conflict that takes place in Hamlet's mind. So for which, what A.C. Bradley says, how does he criticize this play? He says this, A.C. Bradley, in his essay, mentioned one weakness of Shakespeare with concern to Hamlet. He says that it is the state of Hamlet, it is a state of profound melancholy. ಇದು ಈ ಒಂದು ಪದವನ್ನ A.C. Bradley uses in his criticism. What is that? I told you he discusses four important tragedies of Shakespeare. The number one is the Hamlet. Hamlet is the first text that he talks about. He comment about it. He says that the Hamlet state, the state of mind, was a state of profound melancholy. This man was not happy. His condition was sad. He was always in a state of muddleness. Muddle in the sense confusion. So, in this play, Hamlet, he says, the mysteriousness of life is one thing. The psychological unintelligibility of a dramatic character is quite another. So far, the character Hamlet doesn't appear like a psychological intelligent character. He's more like a dramatic. There is no genuineness in this text. That's what he says. So his point is well feel strange that in Hamlet, strength and weakness mingled in one soul, and the soul doomed to such misery and apparent failure. So this text, this Hamlet is a failed character because his entire life filled with the misery and apparent failure. So that he calls it as a state of profound melancholy. So after that, here Bradley discusses another important text, that is Othello. Regarding Othello, what does he say here? So now Bradley turns to Othello, and for his, what is the problem in Othello? Here he says that the most painfully exciting and the most terrible of Shakespeare's tragedy. So, among all Shakespearean tragedies, according to A.C. Bradley, Othello is the most terrible tragedy. The reason is simple because though it's not highly as the other tragedies and less symbolic, but the emotional pull is strong. I told you the way he treats Desdemona, a very innocent character, is a very strong. The suffering of Desdemona is the most nearly intolerable thing that Shakespeare offers us. Her suffering, he is like what? He's like the most loving, dumb creatures tortured without cause by the being he adores. Though he adores her, though he loves her, but he still tortures her, and he badly treats Desdemona. So this is the reason why A.C. Bradley he calls this text as a very terrible tragedies according to him. So come back to what the simple story about the entire Othello. I told it is a domestic tragedy of Shakespeare. Remember, Othello is a domestic tragedy of Shakespeare. He borrowed the story from an Italian writer. So he's okay, the voice is breaking. So he's inspired by the Italian writer. So Othello was so voice is breaking again. 1 minute. Is it happening to all of you people? Is the voice is breaking here? Probably it will be all right as the network connection fluctuates. So let me continue with this. So he borrowed this text from the Italian writer. So Othello was a Moor with a black skin. We know that he's in black color. He's a black Moor, and he was a brave warrior. He was a brave warrior. He was married to a white girl. That's a Desdemona, a very beautiful girl who was far younger in age. She was very younger to him, and Othello he's suspicious and jealousy. Othello he's suspicious and jealousy. Okay, the voice is because the mic is on, but despite the problem is rising. I think due to some student it seems they are connecting through faculty's link, and please make sure that when you click the link, there on the top there is mentioned the teacher's link and the faculty's link. So only through faculty link, only through teacher's link you have to attend. Otherwise, this problem will never rise. Okay, let me. So yes, there is one suggestion that any people can log in again. You can try it again so that you will get the proper connection. Okay, see, some say that everything looks sound fine, and so the audio there is no problem with the audio then. So what happened? So he's married a very beautiful girl that's a Desdemona. So the color complexion is different. The Desdemona is very beautiful with the white color, whereas the Othello is a black moon, and it's a very younger to him, and there is a lot of age gap between them. So Othello is a suspicious and jealous by nature. By nature itself, he's a jealous, and Iago poisons his ears by telling him that his wife has illicit relationship with Cassio. So Iago, he's the one who put a seed of suspicion in the mind of Othello, and already he has a weakness for suspicious, and it lingers a lot, and it increased. And Iago is the one who poisons his ears by telling him that his wife has illicit relationship with Cassio. And remember, Othello has given an handkerchief to a Desdemona as a token of love and affection. But when he screams, when he asks for the gift that he has given, that time Desdemona was unable to produce it. And then he confirms, but actually that was not the truth. Desdemona was very much true to her character. So in the final scene, you come to know that Othello accuses the innocent Desdemona of being unfaithful to him and smothers. Okay, so what happened? In the final scene, Othello accuses the innocent Desdemona of being unfaithful to him and smothers with his pillow. And finally, he kills himself. It is a very very psychological play. So it gives a very the cathartic situation to the entire audience, because there is one character who has a lot of weakness and another other character who is a very much innocent. So that's the reason why at the time when Desdemona was not able to produce the handkerchief, he thinks that is the truth, that she has a relationship with the cashier, but that was not the truth. It's all got created by the Iago. So here, the one side there are people filled with the venom and hatred and the malicious tendency, and the other side there are very innocent people like Desdemona. So by looking at this, by reading this story, what A.C. Bradley tells, what is the viewpoint of A.C. Bradley? So he says this, okay, he says that it's the most terrible of Shakespeare tragedies, and and further, he says that the Bradley ranks Iago on the top of Shakespeare's evil characters. So according to Bradley, Iago, he ranked the tops as an evil character. So because remember, there is one syndrome, Iago syndrome. Iago syndrome. What is that? Iago syndrome. It is motiveless malignity. Motiveless malignity means I don't know why I hate you. There is no reason for that why I hate you. So it's Iago syndrome. That is motiveless malignity. So we don't know that why I hate you. I hate you bitterly because I don't know the reason. So that is a tendency, because Iago, he's the one who does all that, and because of he's the root cause for the death of King Desdemona. And when Desdemona when Othello comes to know that Desdemona is very true to her character, and Othello dies himself. So here Bradley, he correctly ranks Iago on the top of Shakespeare's evil characters, because the greatest intensity and subtlety of imagination have gone into his making. Iago on the characters, because that is the portrayal of Shakespeare's, because of his, the evil tendency. In terms of psychological complexity, the Bradley suggests he is equaled only by Hamlet, but goes on to argue that the tragedy of Othello is in a sense of tragedy too. And then it does not show us the violent man. After that, coming back to King Lear. So now, so far we understood a little about King Hamlet. What is his viewpoints of A.C. Bradley, and the viewpoints of A.C. Bradley on Othello we understood. And now the next text is the King Lear, because all these texts they're very much problematic. Because some students are attending very clearly. You can rejoin it again. So coming back to the King Lear, critics think of King Lear as the most powerful tragedy of Shakespeare. See, Hamlet is as an effect on the audience. There's an effect on the audience because there is one concept called alienation effect. I mean, you should remember the term alienation effect. That is Greek drama. But in drama, drama. For example, Elizabethan drama, Shakespearean drama, Restoration drama. We have epic theatre, epic drama. Absurd drama. 20th century. Abbe theatre. Irish literary movement. So there are different schools of theatre. What we talk about this epic theatre, the term I use called as alienation effect, which means, see, when you were watching a drama, because those were the days the theatre was the only source of entertainment, only source of education and entertainment in terms of to the people to instruct, because even the text plays there not to instruct the audience, right? In terms of could be message or education, whatever. So there, alienation effect is that you should remember, which means, for example, I am an actor and you are an audience. The way that I perform my acting with some message, just imagine, my performance is affect you people, and you surrender yourself completely. And in case if there's a tragedy in my acting, and you people start crying, you start feeling it. So as an audience, you have to develop a detached, and you have to develop a detached emotions. And you should always feel that yes, you're watching a play and you're just enjoying. That's it. and you're not supposed to be carried away the emotional effect of a characters. For example, ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಸಿನಿಮಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಮೂವಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ how the character suffers a lot. Could be hero or heroine, and while you watching the movie and you also feel very sad about it, you start crying. What happens? It's called as an alienation effect. So alienation effect directs the audience, and you're not supposed to be mingled with the characters. You detach yourself. But when you talk about Shakespearean tragedies, even after you're asking to stop and restart. See, some students are everything is looks and sounds fine. They say voice is very much clear. Probably you have to do it. You people have to restart when many people are not. Only few people are saying that. That Sri and all that. But other students, they say everything is fine. The voice is very much clear. Uh, but anyhow, we have offline classes also from 19 onward. You student can also attend the classes, and the same classes will be repeated again in the Mysore Center. So what happens? Come back to here. I was telling that yes, alienation effect. See, this character, you are not supposed to be carried away by the emotional effect. Okay, it seems it's fine for the student also. That's fine because the system is working well, and because if some say the voice is not clear, I feel very sorry about it. But anyhow, you try to reconnect it again, login again. So okay, okay, you try to listen as much as possible. What happens? I was telling that yes, you have to look at the drama in a detached angle. That you should remember. So talking about the King Lear, talking about the King Lear, what does he say here? Critics think King Lear as the most powerful tragedy of Shakespeare. He says that in a very tragedy of Shakespeare, it is one of the most pessimistic too. It's the most pessimistic tragedy too. The story is concerned with the king and his three daughters. The story, it is concerned with the king and his three daughters, the Goneril, Regan, and Cordelia. And then he decides, okay, let me connect again. Okay, I'll leave the station and I connect again. Yes, dear students, I think now it's all right. I think the voice is clear now. I rejoined again. I think now the sound is clear. Sound is okay. Now, I was talking about the King Lear. King Lear is a story of with his three daughters. That's a Gondrel, Regan, and Cordelia. So he decides in old age that he will divide his kingdom among them proportionately. Proportionately, he decided to bifurcate the property, proportionate the property to to their love for him, because he has to testify the love and affection. On depends on that, he distribute his property among the three daughters. So Gondrel and Regan please him very much. The Gonril and Regan they please him by exaggerating their love for him, but Cordelia does not do that. The Cordelia, she does not exaggerate a love affection to the father because her love is true to her nature. But whereas Regan and the Gonril, they are the evil-minded daughters. They praised him, they exaggerated very much, and they got all the property. In fact, she truly loves her father. Who? Cordelia loves her father so much. And Leah becomes angry and divides the kingdom equally. He gives nothing to Cordelia. He gives nothing to Cordelia, and Gondrel and Regan drive out old and powerless Leah. Further, when he reached the ripen age, there is one famous line in King Lear that ripeness is all. Ripeness is all. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ವಯಸ್ಸಾದ ಮೇಲೆ the condition ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. So after he has become an aged old person, and the two daughters, that is Regan and the Goneril, they have sent him out. And what happens here? So Gondrel and the Regan, they drive out old and powerless Lear now, and here he is now mad with rage at their gratitude. He goes out into the storm and arrives at Dover, and he is amidst of the storm. He is amidst of the storm and raining, and that is the condition. The moment as we audience looking at the plight of a King Lear, and you feel so sorry about it. How you this man? Why didn't he, Anila? Why didn't he approve of the true love of his own daughter Cordelia? And look at that. So when he has to testify the trueness of anybody, the truth and the obedience of anyone, and he has to do it in a proper way, and he was flattered by the exaggeration, and now he's paid for it, and he goes out into the storm and arrives at Dover. He finds shelter in the rent of the King of France, with whom Cordelia is married. So his daughter, the Cordelia, is married to the King of France, and Cordelia welcomes and takes care of her repentant father. At the end, Cordelia dies, and Lear too meets his end, and the two of his sisters, Gondrel and the Regan, also kill each other. And it is really the darkest of Shakespeare tragedies. So because all the characters they're they suffer from they have their own weakness, they have their own follies and the weakness, and Shakespeare could do such a very darkest tragedy and really affect the entire human reading community, the people of those who read literature, and the entire the society. And what happens, it is affect the entire society. And what is the viewpoints of AC Bradley? What does he say here? The AC Bradley, he talks about, see, turning to King Lear, the Bradley echoes very badly. The play as a whole is imperfectly dramatic. This is the word AC Bradley used the word. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ನೀವು ಎಕ್ಸಾಮಲ್ಲಿ ಬರಿಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. So the words of AC Bradley. So what does he say? The whole play is a imperfectly dramatic, and there is something in its very essence which is at war with the senses and demands a purely imaginative realization. It gives a kind of a imaginative realization. So this play is overpowered to the purely tragic emotions. There's overpowered with tragic emotions and physically horror, and it stimulates a kind of a pity and fear in the mind of an audience. It creates a pity which appalled essence of tragedy to excite. So the very essence of this play, King Lear, it is create a kind of a very horror, a very tragic emotions, and stimulus a kind of a pity among these characters. So Bradley, he correctly compare Shakespeare with a Greek philosopher, and that is, and so he says that here the Shakespeare, he deliberately does this to give some instruction that one should be very wise in terms of assessing, the people's words. So now Bradley argues over the last words by Lear on the body of Cordelia represent on the agony. He says that not of pain, but of ecstasy and unbearable joy, or belief that she is still alive. This is reasons that play as some optimism. So even, at the last fragment of the play, the King Lear, he feels very sad about the his inner pains and the punks are shown after the death of the Cordelia. So here the whole play it affects to the whole reading community. And next is another important tragedy that is a Macbeth. So, what is the story of the Macbeth? Let me give this story in a nutshell, and after that we'll get into the what A.C. Bradley's views that we could see here. See, Macbeth it is also called as a dark play, full of cruelty and bloodshed. This is the word you should remember. The entire play Macbeth it is full of cruelty and bloodshed, because the killing, stabbing, otherwise bloodshed, otherwise the kind of betrayal, these are the quite common in this feature in this play. So Macbeth is also called as a dark play full of cruelty and bloodshed. And here Macbeth and his wife moved by the prophecy of the witches. Remember how witches take a very terrible role in Macbeth play. I think there the root cause for the entire tragedy took place in this text, and because of them, the King Duncan was killed, and Macbeth was instigated by his own wife. No, we can, because when witches say that you will be the king of future Scotland, and he decided to listen to his wife, and he takes he was instigated by her, and he kills a Duncan, an aged King Duncan. So it's a full of bloodshed. The Macbeth and his wife, moved by the prophecy of the witches. Even the supernatural elements will also play a very crucial role or a terrible role in terms of tragedies. So, kill Duncan and become the king himself. He also kills Banquo, who knows of the crime. There is a very appealing psychological scene in which the Banquo's ghost appears before Macbeth. And Macbeth and the Lady Macbeth suffer very much psychologically. They see and smell blood everywhere. Lady Macbeth the breaks down under the pressure of her guilt. She says, "All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand." So whatever she does, wherever she goes, whatever she does, she feels that the guilt is haunted by her, and she has been haunted by the guilt, and Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. That is the crime and punishment. The inner psyche or conscience always pricks her, and she lives a life of life and death condition. Such is the very terrible story that we could see in Macbeth. So, what A.C. Bradley opines, how does he opine? What are his opinions about this play? So, for Macbeth, he writes, A.C. Bradley writes, Shakespeare no longer restricts the action to purely human agencies. Shakespeare no longer restricts the action to a purely human agencies, and he can go to at any extent of human attitudes. The best example is the killing the old person and killing his own known person, the Banquo. And Macbeth has gone it developed such an evil personality. So there is no restriction of action. So, because when we talk about the tragedy, it is an action, isn't it? So Shakespeare no longer restrict the action to purely human agencies. So in this play, many actions takes place, and further he compares Lady Macbeth with Iago. So A.C. Bradley he compares Lady Macbeth in this play, to whom he compares Lady Macbeth with Iago, and mentioned about the tone of the play, which shows dark and bloody environment in the words of Bradley. What does he say here? It is as if the poet saw the whole story through, and you know uh, the very blackness of the night. So these lines which is there in this material, you can just go through it. And here Macbeth and the Lady Macbeth, Bradley writes, you know that these two characters, they are they are very much day-to-day living character, because there are there's such characters you can also see in day-to-day life. So these characters we can also see in the human world. So according to AC Bradley, the Macbeth, it is happens to be the most the dark tragedy, and the way the true human nature is explored. That's what he says. So in the conclusion, thus through his minute observation and thorough study on Shakespearean tragedies, Bradley he brought varieties of dimensions in the way of reading Shakespeare in 19th century. So he comes with the different approaches to Shakespearean tragedies, and which affects the later prime periods. And he also justify himself by putting concrete arguments. He says that yes, I made a very concrete observation. And in the conclusion, I would like, here, in the conclusion, what I would say about the entire, the plays of Shakespearean world, it is filled with the all mixed characters. There are good and the bad, all worldly characters, we could see here. So by analyzing these four important, texts, H.C. Bradley, he winds up his the text that is Shakespearean tragedies. So this is the this the kernel of the entire text, and you people have to learn the one thing. So I told you there are two important component which is there in Shakespearean tragedies. One is the poetic justice and the moral lesson. But the question is whether the Shakespeare was able to give a poetic justice. Poetic justice in the sense the good character should be given a justice. For example, listen here. Poetic justice, it is often asked whether there is a poetic justice in Shakespeare tragedies. We find that the heroes of Shakespeare suffer more than they deserve. So the poetic justice, why Shakespeare is not given a justice to the character? What is the reason? Because his character, they suffer more than they deserve. Because Desdemona suffers a lot, Cordelia suffers a lot, and this poetic justice, why he has not given? He failed in giving it. So sometimes the evil characters do not suffer so much, and as good characters. Only good characters suffer, but evil characters do not do that. Sometimes even the innocent characters are crushed under the wheel of fate. In this sense, we can say that there is no poetic justice in Shakespeare's plays. Remember, I repeat, this line is a very important. In Shakespearean plays, there is no poetic justice. It is often asked whether there is a poetic justice in Shakespeare or not. It is not, because the evil characters do not suffer so much as the good characters. Sometimes even the innocent characters are crushed under the wheel of fate. And in this sense, we can say that there is no poetic justice in Shakespeare's plays. But in reality, there is a very little justice in the world. And we often see that the good suffering and the evil prospering. Shakespeare was a realist, and he held a mirror up to nature. Shakespeare, he held a mirror up to nature. Here, we often see the good suffers and the evil prospers. It is as similar the way of life and living. We could also see the evil always proper, whereas the good people they suffer even more. So this is the poetic justice was not given in Shakespearean plays. There is even if you look at Samuel Johnson in his preface to Shakespeare, he also tells the same thing. Shakespeare he sacrificed innocence for the convenience. ಅವನ ಮನ ಬಂದ ಹಾಗೆ ಅವನ ಪ್ಲೇನ ಬರೆಯೋ ಸಲುವಾಗಿ to give us line to the the kind of a completeness to the text, he sacrificed innocence for the convenience. The best example is the Desdemona and the Cordelia. And why did he do that? What is the reason why he doesn't instruct the audience? It is a weakness of Shakespeare. Despite he's a great writer in the world, a dramatist, Shakespeare still has some weakness, still has some problem. So that we could see in his play. So I told you the Shakespeare, he does not follow the poetic justice. And now there is a moral lesson in text. Despite a weakness, there are some strength. So in Shakespeare tragedies, there is a moral lesson. Shakespeare stood in favor of the good. In his tragedy, we constantly feel that there is some ultimate power which shapes our life and controls the human existence. So by giving this obstruction message, there is still some guy, unseen hand, some guiding hand. Still, there is a lot to instruct to the reader. Probably to the whole humanity has to realized. In a way, there is a moral lesson in it. How Shakespeare stood in favor of the good. In his tragedy, we constantly feel there is some ultimate power which shapes our life and controls the human existence. And then and Shakespeare compares human life with a tragic drama in 7 acts. So for example, all the tragedies, like Shakespeare has great faith in humankind. For example, he exclaims in the Tempest what a piece of work is. So for example, when we say the Shakespeare's great faith in mankind, that we could see in the Tempest. Okay, for example, the good characters like a Prospero, the Caliban, and the Miranda. Remember, there is one line. There is a famous line in Tempest. I suffered of those I saw suffered, because I think it's said by Miranda or Prospero. You can confirm it, because I suffered of those I saw suffered. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಅಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಸಫರ್ ಆಗ್ತಿರೋ ಜನಗಳನ್ನ ನೋಡಿ ನಾನು ಸಫರ್ ಆದೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಫೀಲಿಂಗ್. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಐ ಸಫರ್ಡ್ ಆಫ್ ದೋಸ್ ಐ ಸಾ ಸಫರ್ಡ್. ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ಕ್ರಾಸ್ ಚೆಕ್ ದ ಲೈನ್, and in the line it is there in Tempest. So Shakespearean plays many texts, there is lot to instruct you know the reader. And I told you the tragic flaw. The tragic flaw, it is nothing but a weakness. I repeat, H.C. Bradley says that in Shakespearean tragedy, the character is destiny. So that is a tragic flaw. This means that the hero in Shakespeare tragedy has some tragic flaw which brings about their catastrophe. ಅವರ ತಪ್ಪುಗಳಿಂದನೇ ಅವರು catastrophic ಆಗಿದ್ದು. Because of their own human follies, they led their own tragic death. And for example, Hamlet is indecisiveness, is Julius Caesar that I explained. So these weaknesses are not so great, but face such circumstances that they're not able to tackle them. That is why it is said that the chance or a fate also plays an important role in Shakespeare's plays. If you place Hamlet in place of Othello, or Othello in place of Hamlet, there will be no tragedy, isn't it? So every character, they are distinct in their own approach, and that is what we could see in the entire Shakespearean tragedies. So this is about um, from the old text, that is S.C. Bradley's criticism, Shakespearean tragedy. Now, dear student, probably in the next class, I'm going to teach another important text of the Shakespeare, that is the play, the Macbeth. So I'm going to teach you, because in the paper, that is which paper? The paper. See, so far I taught you. I taught you this first text, the paper one. I've taught you the paper second. I haven't taught yet. In paper second, I have to teach. I mean, now what is the syllabus? 1 minute. Yeah, I have taught you paper one so far, and paper second I haven't taught. In the paper second, I'm going to teach you this text, that is Macbeth. I'll teach you Macbeth in my next class, and I also take up some text in the Restoration literature. This Rape of the Lock I taught you, and in the fourth paper, the Shakespearean Sonnets and Criticism, and probably I have to take another text in comparative drama. In my next class, I'll take up Macbeth. Because still we have 10 minutes time. What I do, I'll just give a little introduction about the text, and I'll introduce the character, and probably I'll begin with my explanation in the next class. So my next class is on Shakespeare's Macbeth. Just now I just summarized in a brief way, but now I'm going to teach this text in a detail. Okay, so I must tell Macbeth, it's one of the tragedies of Shakespeare. Here, it is considered as a psychological play, the where we could see the crime and the punishment, and then we could see the cruelty, and we could see the disloyalty, in fact, because Macbeth towards the king, that's a banker, it is a disloyal. Because when he came to his house as a guest, the both husband and wife, the Lady Macbeth and the Macbeth, they conspired to kill him. So that the dishonest and the disloyalty we could see in Shakespearean plays, especially when it comes to Macbeth. So in Macbeth, it is a reckless ambition because he is over ambitious, and the story of the play is from the Scottish history. We could see the Scotland, the Scottish history in the play. So the story is based on is from the Scottish history. So then, who are the characters in Macbeth? For example, we have important character that is Duncan. King Duncan is a king of Scotland, and we have two sons of Duncan, that is the Malcolm and Donald Bain. And after that, we have two generals of the army. There are two army officers. One is the Macbeth and the Banquo. So the question is, being a general of the army, king's army, how Macbeth has become a king of Scotland? What is the reason? How has he become a king of Scotland? It is because remember the three witches. They instigated him that you will be the king of Scotland in future. So after after he completes his the war field, and after he's coming from the war field, he met the three witches, and then they give a prophecy. They prophesize that you will be the king of Scotland. Then he started to that he discusses with his wife, and after that she instigated, and he kills a series of he become the murderer by a series of killing. And the Macbeth and the Banquo, they are the general army officer, and there are other noble men of Scotland. They are Macduff, Lennox, Ross, and then and there are other characters are there, noblemen of Scotland. Importantly, the Macduff, Lennox, and the Rocks, and we have another character that the Fleance is a son to Banquo, and the Seward, and no, I'm not going to give you the all major main character. For example, we have a Potter, the Sergeant, the Old Man, Lady Macbeth, Lady Macduff, and then the ghost of the Banco, and the apparitions, and and other messengers that we could see in this entire text. So, dear students, now this is it's almost 1:30. So, because I don't want to begin now, mixing the fag end of my session. I want to begin this text in the next session. In my next session, I'll take up this text. So, I see you again. Okay. If you have one or two doubts, you can immediately ask. You can ask any doubt that you have, so that I able to answer, because I should also take your questions, and then I request you all, and I tell you, if you have any doubts, clarifications, you can always talk to me over phone between 10:30 to 5:30, not beyond that. And otherwise, you attend the offline classes starting from 19th till 25th in the headquarters of our university in case for you itself. There, we'll have interaction session too. The doubt you have on that. So now, if there are no questions, I just stop the session. And so far, hope you enjoyed my classes, like the Rip Up the Log and the tragical history of Dr. Faustus, and the text, other text, whichever I have taught you so far, and perhaps the Rip Up the Log and today's text. Okay, and another text that is general prologue yesterday. Thank you, people, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it. So see you then. If there are no questions, I stop the session, and we'll see you in the next session.